Welcome to Diasporaa, the show where we share the remarkable stories of immigrants from the Indian subcontinent. I'm your host, Aditya Mehta, and each week we sit down with individuals who have made the journey over and explore their experiences, their challenges, their triumphs. We delve into their unique perspectives on adapting to a new culture while staying connected to their roots. Today we have a very special guest. It's Prachi Mehta, an entrepreneur in the pharmaceutical space based in Seattle. She was born and brought up in Mumbai before moving to Vancouver, BC, in her early 30s. And after 4 years, she moved to Seattle. She's had a career in the pharmaceutical space, working in brand marketing for large companies. And now she has an interesting business that, among other things, helps patients with rare diseases get access to medicines that are not otherwise available in their home countries. Now, how do I know Prachi? Is because she's my wife of 14 years. Prachi, welcome to the show.
Hi, Adi.
So, first question, is it Bombay or is it Mumbai?
It's Bombay for me, but so many people get confused that why do I still stick to the word Bombay? So I quickly jump in and say it's Mumbai, but it's
Yeah.
always going to be Bombay for me.
Okay. This is really weird for us because we never talk to each other in English. Fun fact, we are both Gujarati, but we talk to each other in Hindi for some reason. And my parents are always like, "Why are you speaking in Hindi?" And I realize it's because when you are friends with someone in Bombay, you will speak Hindi so that all the friends understand what you're saying. And she's my friend, so I talk to her in Hindi. What was it like growing up in Bombay where you had so many family members? Like me, you are also, four grandparents are all from Bombay. So what was that like growing up with so many family members around?
I think now that I look back, growing up in Bombay was an absolute privilege, was an absolute blessing. Of course, when you are in the thick of it, when you are surrounded by so many friends, family, cousins, everyone around, you're not really thinking about it. Like, you're not really counting on those blessings. It only takes you only count your blessing when you see it from a distance.
Yeah.
So when I moved to the other side of the world, that's when I realized that even though my life looked very, very normal, very routine, just like any other family in India would seem like. But now that I look back, I do feel that I'm privileged to and blessed to have the kind of childhood that I had with so many family members around me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. You don't appreciate all the family you have until you have lived away. Now, I had a stint abroad from the age of 17 to 21. So I think I'm a little bit more comfortable being out on my own. But I definitely saw how much you miss them, especially in the early days, but even now. Another thing that many of our friends don't know about us, we had an arranged marriage. So walk us through when you were 24 when we got married.
Yeah.
So walk us through how that whole process started off. Because I know my side of the story, but I'm sure our listeners would like to hear your side.
It's funny because whenever somebody asks us, like me and you, both of us, about our journey or like, how did we meet? It's so hilarious because both of us, we both tell a different story. And it almost seems like we're not married to each other, we're married to
Yeah,
somebody else. So it's funny because I always have a romantic angle to it, and
sure.
how, Adi, you always have such a practical angle to it as if it was just a very process oriented setup. So,
Yeah.
just for the benefit of your listeners, we met because my dad's best friend and Adi's mom, they met each other at Adi's mom's office.
Yeah.
And it was so random that your mom just told my dad's best friend that, hey, you know what? I'm looking for somebody for my son. Do you know anyone? And my dad's best friend was like, of course. She's
Yeah.
like almost my daughter. And like literally, that's how it all began.
Yeah.
And I was absolutely scandalized. I think
Yeah.
if that's not an overstatement, I was absolutely scandalized when he came home and said, "Oh, you have to meet this person." And I still remember us preparing for my MBA exams, and it was my final exams, and I'm like, "What? Like, what person? Like, oh, you have to meet this person because we are going to set you up, and we're going to see how you two get along." And I was like,
Yeah.
"What are you talking?" I kind of just went out of the room, but 14 years from that day, here we are, married and having made so many memories.
So I asked my guests who know me well, what were your first impressions of me? So I think I know what you're going to say, but what was your first impression of me when you met me?
Like I said, I absolutely came to meet you. It was almost like I didn't want to come meet you, but I
Yeah.
had to come meet you. So I came with such negative biases in my head. Having said that, when I first saw you walking in, Adi, you know what I thought as like, who's this guy? Like he's just walking with like, his head shaved off. And then
Yeah.
I happened to observe the
I
little mehndi on your palm, and I'm like, who's this? Like,
there's a story behind that. So I had recently learned that I'm starting to bald a little bit. So I had in a you go through your stages of anger, denial, etc., etc. I had shaved my head to like a half. It wasn't fully shaved, but it was like a half blade. So it was very very short hair, and it was the mehndi on my hand was of a Texas Longhorn symbol. And if you don't know what mehndi is, I'll add a link in the show notes. It's a henna. It's like it's a temporary tattoo slash decoration that you do during weddings.
yeah.
And it was my dear friend Maulik's engagement, and that's everyone's like, you should get some mehndis, and I was like, I don't want that Indian floral design. What do I really feel passionate about? And obviously Texas Longhorns, as my
Yes.
listeners know. So this tiny hair guy walks in with mehndi on his like a longhorn bull symbol. So yeah, that was an interesting look to wear when you meet someone from a marriage perspective. So I think that was pretty funny. And when after the wedding was over and we were in the car driving off, the uncle who introduced us was actually standing next to the window. So I rolled down the window and I told him, "Thank you for the introduction," because it resulted in us getting married. We lived in a joint family,
Yeah.
and I think by now my listeners know that it's a multi-generational household in India, and that's pretty common.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was your thought about living in a joint family? Is that something that you assumed that we would do? Was that something you preferred? Or was that something that you went along with because it was my preference?
Yeah. So as I'm just going to go back to the point where we met, and even though I came with all the negative biases and I was in my head, I was like, I'm just going to talk to him as if I'm talking to some random stranger and just
Yeah.
get done with it.
Yeah.
Because I am pretty comfortable talking to people. I love people
Yeah.
in general. But what I realized when I spoke to you, and I think we almost spoke for 3 hours,
Yeah.
I realized that I don't know about life partner, but I definitely do see this person as my friend.
Mm.
And that's where it all started. And that's when a lot of things came out. One of the things was that, like I said, since I love people, I absolutely was looking forward to the concept of a joint family or like living with in-laws
Yeah.
because I'm of the firm belief that yes, we are different generations, we may have differences of opinion,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of collective wisdom that comes on the table that they
Yeah.
bring, which you and I would lack because, as you said, I was 24 and a half and you were like 25 and a half.
Yeah.
If we have to start the foundation, we have to start this new life together and
Yeah.
lay the foundation right. I did see your parents as somebody extremely wise, and I was fortunate that I had a picture that my in-laws are going to be people like these, and they were absolutely those kind of people.
Yeah.
So I was rather excited to be living with them.
I think in the early days you would be worried about how my mom was with you, and then I was like, oh, that's you would feel she's very corporate,
Yeah.
and I would say that's we don't have an off switch in this family. Everybody's exactly how they are at work and at home. So if you treat her like a boss, you'll understand where she's coming from, and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And I think that helped to some extent in understanding her.
Yep.
Yeah, none of our family members have an off switch. We're exactly the same everywhere. So, okay. Once we settled in, I think 3 years into being married, we were still living at home. I decided to do my MBA.
Yeah.
And my MBA was an extremely transformative part of my life. I underwent a sea change as a person in my mindset, in my mannerisms, even, and in the amount of exposure I had. Because the first few years, I was working in the family business, living at home, commuting with the family. So I was very inward looking. And the MBA kind of opened my eyes up to like a world of possibilities. What was it like from your vantage point that you're seeing your husband go through this transformation? I mean, firstly, do you agree that I was transformed? And secondly, your life was relatively static at the time because you continued working in I think that time you were in Roche, maybe 2014 to
Yes.
16.
That was almost no
Yeah.
worries. Yeah.
Yeah. So, how was it from your vantage point?
So, yeah, to your question, yes, it was indeed transformative. And I did see the transformation in you. And having said that, Adi, when I had met you, I knew you had left a life behind. I knew you were in this country, you were in United States before you moved back to India. So there was definitely a big part of your life which I didn't know. What you were in India is
Yeah.
something which I saw in our courtship, in early days of marriage, but I just didn't know what person you were when you were in this country.
Yeah.
So that was, even though we came to the US as tourists, you showed me a college, university campus.
We were in Austin when I found out I got into LBS actually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I saw that, but that was all your flashback, or like, you talking me through what it was like, but I'd never seen you as a person. And so when you went to do your MBA with London Business School, the good part about the program was it was an executive program.
Yeah.
So you were in India most of the time,
Yeah.
but you were out of India. It was almost like I was living with two different people, because the week when you would be away,
Yeah.
and the stories I would hear on a daily basis, and then the week that you would come back
Yeah.
post the program, you were a completely different person. And then as the whole excitement fizzled out the next 2 weeks, you were again back to being the Indian Adi that I knew. And then again, the whole cycle would repeat every month.
Yeah.
So I saw that whole ebbs and flows of the change in your personality, in your
Yeah.
behavior. And that pretty much excited me as like, okay, this guy has so much more than what met my eye. And yes, so to end that answer, that was a complete transformational journey. And that honestly, that actually gave me the confidence to take the big step, which we took later on in life.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was because of LBS that I constantly got exposed to the outside world, and I could survive with a dose of that every month. But after the program got over, I just fell off a cliff. Like I wanted to get back to that. And it was in fact towards the end of 2016, after I had graduated, maybe 6 months later, we had come to the US for your brother's graduation. And we ended the year we did a lot of touristy stuff into Universal Studios.
Yeah.
And we ended the new year in a limo in Vegas with all of them asleep, by the way. I was the only one awake at midnight. And the next morning, 1st January 2017, we were on the Aero Bridge boarding the plane, and I told Prachi, I don't want to go back. And that was like I'm going to make one more attempt to move to this part of the world. And if it doesn't happen, we'll make our peace with it. Because I tried many times under different contexts to try to come. And we spent all of 2017 trying to move to the US. It's well documented on this show how challenging the immigration journey is. And US didn't come through, and that's how we then ended up in Canada, because I had made up my mind to move abroad for quality of life. And the difference was, in the US, we did have some idea what we were going to do. I was going to run my digital marketing company. I'd even signed a lease for like a nice big 1-bedroom in close to the downtown of Austin. I had literally identified everything I was going to do, and then the visa didn't come through. So Canada, we had no plan. And when I reached, I was like, this can be a great reset, and I could do potentially anything that I want to do. But I think somewhere you wanted, or not wanted, but you had assumed that we will have a plan for Canada too. Like this guy has a plan like he does for the US. And that was not the case. So how was that for you when you, I guess in the first few weeks in Canada, realized that this guy is not exactly moving to Canada. He's been basically escaping from India. Like it was more about the leaving than it was about the arriving.
Right.
So how was that realization, and how hard was it to wrap your head around that?
Well, it was interesting because one, we had this whole discussion of, yes, we're going to leave the country, we're going to start life from scratch all over again, reinvent the wheel. So I was kind of excited that, okay, let's do this, and I know you so well because I thought I was of the firm opinion that I don't want you to regret later on in life that had I done this at age in my early 30s, I would be a different person. And I know that you always, we both believe that one shouldn't live life with regrets. So even though I had so many questions in my mind, I'm like, let's do it. So after we moved over the initial excitement of, okay, let's do it. Let's plan for a visa. Let's book tickets. I still remember the day when I went to my manager, my then manager, who was the oncology business unit director of Novartis. And I went and told him, hey, I'm leaving because I have to move. I'm moving abroad. He was kind of shocked because he didn't see that coming. And he's like, why?
Yeah.
Because everybody knew our background. Everybody's like, okay, I know you guys have
Yeah.
everything here, etc.
This statement, I'll pause you here. This statement, you have everything here.
Yes.
That is something I got so sick of hearing
Yeah.
because everything is a subjective term.
Yeah.
And I mean, I hear it even now.
Yeah.
Like people here will be like, you didn't need to move. You had everything. Why did you? Like it. The only reason people move to this part of the world is economic.
Yeah.
In most people's
Most
eyes,
people's
right?
eyes, yeah.
Very few people are like, oh, I want the blue sky and the outdoors, and therefore I'm going to uproot my life. So yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, continue.
So, but Adi, I still see that as a privilege. Like, I think you're still privileged to
Yeah.
be sick of something which most
Yeah.
people are chasing their whole life.
100%.
So that's knock on wood. By God's grace, we had that privilege. However, when I went to tell him, he had my promotion letter on his table and he said, oh, okay, we were going to break the news today about you getting promoted. And that
Yeah.
moment, it hit me real hard. What I was going to leave behind, what am I going to wrap up in India? Because this is something I'm never coming back to.
Yeah.
That's when it really hit me
Yeah.
and pierced me. And I'm like, okay, then this is when it gets real. However, the decision was made, the bags were almost being packed,
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
were moving in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. And
So,
you had a very successful career. You would win an award every year.
yeah.
You got promoted multiple times. So I can definitely imagine and appreciate how difficult that was
Yeah.
for you. And did you think about moving within the company at all at that time?
I did, and I did try. The Novartis India then president, did try to put me in touch with the Canada Novartis president, and we tried to make things happen. But that's where the next challenge came in, is because of the location, the city that we decided to move
Yeah.
in, Vancouver, for a lot of practical reasons. There was a next big shock for me that Vancouver practically has no pharmaceutical
Yeah.
industry. Like, I can say it's almost like it's not
Yeah.
existent because everything is on the East Coast, like Toronto, Montreal. So when I was put in touch with the right person and there was a possibility for a transfer, they said, it's not happening if you don't move on the East Coast. And
Yeah.
we knew we're not moving on the East Coast.
Yeah.
So that was the final end to what felt
Yeah.
like a slight sliver of hope of me having a continuation of my career.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a short break now. And when we come back, we'll talk to Prachi about early days in Vancouver and settling in both in terms of life there and career. So we'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Diasporaa on KKNW, where we share interesting stories of first-generation immigrants from the Indian subcontinent. We're talking to Prachi Mehta, a pharmaceutical entrepreneur and my better half. Before we get back to talking to Prachi, I want to take a moment to remind you to subscribe to our channel on YouTube. You can find all our episodes in video format there, right from the first one. So, first impressions of Vancouver. You had never been to Canada before, let alone to Vancouver. You had been to the US twice.
Yeah.
Once when we took that road trip
Yeah.
in 2014, and that was a West Coast vacation. And then for your brother's graduation, which was again West Coast. I mean, West Coast, best coast. But so what were your first impressions, given that it was still West Coast, but Canada?
Well, to be very honest with you, I actually thought we are going for one more vacation because that's what I was used to. Whenever
Yeah.
we packed bags,
Yeah.
it was always that we're going out vacationing somewhere and we're coming back home. So it still had not hit that this is it. We are here.
Yeah.
So that was my first realization, maybe when I set foot in Vancouver. And of course, as everyone knows, Vancouver did take my breath away. It was gorgeous.
Yeah.
I felt like, oh my God, am I going to call this home? Like, this is just a vacation. I can't be calling this home.
Yeah.
So yes, the first impression was very, very positive. But in my mind, all of that still felt like a dream and still felt like a vacation and didn't feel like
Yeah.
this is going to be home.
And I think that dream maybe came crashing down when we started looking for a place to stay. You know, my parents have a 6-bedroom condo, penthouse, South Bombay, beautiful home. And here, the first place we saw was like this tiny 1-bedroom, still downtown, but, older building, metropolitan. And in Hindi, we have a saying called, "Ye shuru hote hi khatam ho gaya." which means this is barely even started and it's already over. And that house was like that, where you could see all of it in one view. So, any nuances that you noticed right away that were different in Canada, or any quirks that you noticed in your first few days?
I mean, after the initial euphoria of the city being beautiful,
Yeah,
that kind of phased out. And like you said, as in reality hit, and with the house hunting and the apartment, one thing I was very sure is not moving out of downtown
yeah,
because it hit me how quiet
yeah,
the city can be, our life here can be.
yeah,
And I was just not prepared for that. So,
yeah,
one is that. Second is, as you mentioned about the size of the homes. And I'm like, oh my God, like, what is this? Why is it just so small? Like, how are we going to, like, this is just going to fill my 6 suitcases are going to fill this room,
yeah,
all of that. So, that's when the second wave of realization hit in. And that's
yeah,
when I realized, okay, this is getting real. This is when the adjustment or sinking in or adjusting to the North American life begins.
yeah,
It literally hit one day at a time, maybe, one house hunting at a time.
yeah.
But that's when it all started hitting in.
You got to go back maybe 2 to 3 months in. You were still working for your Indian employer
Yeah.
at the time. When you went back in such a short time, was there anything in India that you noticed that was different, which was not that you didn't notice earlier as someone living in India?
Like I said, time had paused for me. It almost felt like it was a vacation.
Yeah,
Vancouver is a vacation. I've gone there. And I remember I was just winding up and I went back to India in 2.5 months to
yeah,
return my company assets and my laptops and stuff like that. It didn't feel like I left. I was right there. I went to the office. I was talking to everybody as of like, okay, I'm back in office. But the only difference was now it's to kind of say the final goodbye.
yeah,
I went home, I was sleeping on my bed as if, okay, yeah, my cupboard's still full of clothes and
yeah,
stuff. So it didn't even hit me that I had left for
mm,
good. So the moment of realization, I think, came much later.
yeah. I always joke with Prachi that she should get a like in India you have a train pass, like a monthly pass for a train. She should get a monthly pass for the flight to India because she got to go quite often in the first few years and for long durations as well. You found a job in maybe 3 months or so,
For
4 months. What was that job about, and how was the experience of working in a company in Canada different from India?
So, like I had mentioned earlier, Vancouver is not a pharmaceutical hub.
Yeah.
It's not a pharmaceutical industry. I had a total of one interview, which I
Mm-hmm.
had qualified for
Yeah.
because nothing that I had applied for. I remember I was applying randomly for like marketing jobs
Mm.
in food companies, in furniture companies. It was so random because I
Yeah.
was like, I don't know where do I start from. And as luck would have had it, that was the year when Canada legalized cannabis.
Yeah.
So Canada was the second country which legalized cannabis for consumption. And there was this company, again in downtown Vancouver, they put up an ad, they put up a posting for, they needed somebody as a product manager for their medical cannabis portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
I applied, just kind of rolling up my eyes. I was like, what? I don't even know what am I doing, but I just did it. And yeah, I got the interview with them. And that was the only interview I ever gave. And as luck would have had it, I got the job. I was least expecting it. I was like, there's nothing in common. But what did work in my favor was the industry was new. It was almost like the tobacco industry in the 90s, where nobody, it
Yeah.
was a brand new industry. I was like, well, my life is being reset. Let's reset everything. That was my state of mind at that point. And I'm like, okay, let's see what this whole thing is about. It's going to be exciting. How many times in your lifetime does one get to be a part of an industry which never existed until like literally yesterday?
Yeah.
So that's where, as luck would have favored it, and maybe right time, right place, I got in the role
With the right skill set,
with the right
not just
skills.
right time, right place.
With the right skill set, of course. I got in the role and I started working for this company based out of Vancouver in the downtown. I was thrilled because for the first time in my life, I was walking to work. So that was something which was such a novelty factor for me. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, I've never ever done that. So
Yeah.
I started appreciating all the little things
Mm.
which would otherwise scare me. And I kind of started breaking the egg in my
Yeah.
head and moving forward as like, okay, now I have got this role. I'm going to grow into this role and I'm going to do what it takes to
Yeah.
build my life here. So there were so many things which was so different. First of all, the funniest thing was nobody knew what they were coming to work and doing what, because everything was being built up as, as the company was coming together. It was a
Yeah.
startup, the industry was a startup, the laws and regulations were being made in front of us.
Yeah.
So we were literally like, putting up our plans and then, kind of just tearing them down the next day because the regulation would say, now this is
Yeah.
not done. So it was an absolute fun time. And I think I couldn't have got a better platform to integrate into the workforce in
Yeah.
Canada, because everybody, no matter whatever years of experience they came with, nobody knew what they were
Mhm.
doing.
How was the work culture different compared to corporate in India?
I've never worked with a startup before.
Right.
So that itself was a big difference. I always worked with the big pharma, top 10 pharmaceutical global companies where everything was SOP driven, everything was set in stone. You're basically just executing things. That is completely different from what this company had to offer. Nothing is set in stone. There is no culture per se. Literally, the culture was being built.
Right.
It was funny because there were two divisions: medical cannabis and recreational cannabis.
Yeah.
So the recreational cannabis teams, they always had samples lying all over on the floor. So, my
Yeah.
friends back in India were like, "Oh my God, what are you doing? Like, what are you up to?"
Did they want you to score some samples for them?
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the fact that you started working and you didn't have to do what we call a survival job.
Yeah.
I think that really helped you feel like a local.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, I've seen some folks who come in, they end up going to take the first job they get,
Yeah.
and then they slowly get disillusioned that what this is not the Canadian dream that we came
Absolutely.
for. So I think that was pretty good.
Yeah. So I would like to add over there,
Yeah.
no matter how much I complained, no matter how much I was not prepared for it, I'm still grateful because of what you just said. Like, people have gone through so much before
Yeah.
they landed up on their desired role. But for me, even though it was an industry shift,
Yeah.
it was not a step down in terms of, the kind of money which was offered. It was not a step down at all for someone who's never worked in the North American space,
Yeah.
and for someone who's just entered the country like 4 months ago without knowing a single soul on that land.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
was indeed, I'm indeed grateful for
Yeah.
that opportunity.
We got pregnant within a year
Yeah.
of moving there. How was your pregnancy experience from the point of view first of the Canadian health system, and then we'll talk about culturally and psychologically. But because we hear a wide spectrum of stories
Yeah.
about the health system, how the wait periods are endless,
Yeah.
there's doctors are overwhelmed, so on and so forth. So I obviously have a perspective, but you're the one who actually went through with the pregnancy. So how was it from the Canadian health system's perspective?
So, talking about steep learning curves, the moment we
Yeah.
decided we're going to be moving countries and moving base, everything, like everything came at us altogether, because we moved in April 2018. In Feb or early March 2019, we found out we are pregnant. So it
Yeah.
was not even a year
Yeah.
that we were in a new country. While I was figuring out, while we were figuring out a social circle, making friends,
Yeah.
and then figuring out the whole career path and, kind of putting our claws in the soil with getting settled with our careers and our jobs, I was pregnant. So that was one more thing that we had to suddenly learn, the healthcare system. And to your point, we had heard enough stories, both good and bad, about the
Yeah.
Canadian healthcare. Having said that, I think I had the best ever experience when it came to my pregnancy, our labor, delivery.
Yeah.
It couldn't have gotten any better. Again, grateful to God that we had a good pregnancy, healthy pregnancy. I was working throughout my pregnancy
Yeah.
until the 9th month, and we had a little boy Arjun in November 2019, and I think everything worked perfectly in sync.
So you went through that pregnancy experience. Arjun was born in November 2019, right before COVID. How have you balanced the Indian side of parenting with the North American side of parenting and trying to instill both cultures?
Yeah, I'll just add one more thing over there in terms of what all came to us. So just before I was about to go on my maternity leave, we realized our companies, because there was so many moving pieces in the cannabis industry, and the industry was kind of not ready for a lot of things. Many companies faced too many hurdles. So in my company, they decided to shut down the medical cannabis portfolio,
Yeah.
the division, and that's when they asked the entire medical cannabis team to leave.
Yeah.
So this was literally 1 week before I was going on my mat leave.
Yeah.
So two ways to look at it. Oh, how could it happen to me? I mean, my colleagues were like, "Oh my God, you're almost delivering a child, and how could they do this to you?" Or the other way of looking at it as I was anyways going to be off work for a
Yeah.
year because we have a 1 year maternity leave.
Yeah.
So it's okay. We're going to take this time off and we'll figure out after that. So this could have happened earlier, but it's happened at the right time.
Yeah.
And I did decide to take it more in the positive context. So once I knew my child is going to be born in this part of the world, and me, you know me, how I am very, very, very upbeat about everything traditional, about everything, the best of what our land has to offer, Ayurveda, in terms of health. I knew one thing, that after having lived there for almost a year and a half before Arjun was born, I saw so many good things in the society around, and I was never able to realize that while I was living in India. But since I saw it so upfront and so close, I realized I'm going to be inculcating the best of both worlds
Yeah.
for my child. And I think that's even better than what I would have done if I was in India.
What are some examples of that?
So, by what I mean by best of both worlds is when it comes to health, when it comes to food, when it comes to diet, I'm a traditionalist
Yeah.
with everything local, everything farm fresh, everything made from scratch at
Yeah.
home, and, the traditional Ayurvedic properties. So, I knew when it comes to building the gut, I'm going to
Yeah.
be resorting to the Indian standards. However, what I really lean for on the Western world is how people are so forward thinking for their child, how people are so progressive, how the modern millennial parenting has so many, of course, a lot of it is now moved to India too, thanks to social media and so much awareness. But there are traits which I see in kids over here, which is sharing, which is, thinking about others, which is having the perspective of the environment around you,
Yeah.
having a bigger purpose of your country. Like all those things, I don't see that with kids back in India. It's
Yeah.
very limited to me, myself, and my family.
Yeah.
Here, the kids are very outward looking, and that's something.
One
Yeah.
of the hallmarks of a high context country like India is that the family ties are very strong, but the community ties can be weaker.
Yeah,
And it's the opposite here.
yeah,
So you'll not see anybody in India walking around in a Mumbai t-shirt.
Mhm.
Like here you'll see people
Mhm.
with a Seattle
Yeah.
t-shirt or a sports team.
yeah,
But the family ties tend to not be as strong here, especially with the extended family. So that's a pretty common thing with the high context and low context cultures. I've had fun balancing both sides. I can definitely see the benefit of certain Indian practices like the home cooked food, the Indian
Mhm.
ingredients that you have. You almost never fall sick, right? Never brings anything from the daycare or the school. I see the benefits of him speaking Gujarati fluently.
yeah.
But I also think that the way he loves his sports teams, that's it's Indian too, but it's very American at the
Yeah.
same time. He was asking me about the Texas Longhorn score earlier today. So yeah, I think not to pat ourselves on the back too much, but I think we're doing a good job balancing the two
Yeah,
careers.
but over here, I definitely have to give you the credit, because you always said one thing which I took I kind of instilled that in my head, that is that if we have decided to uproot our life and
Mhm.
come on the other side of the world and build our lives over here, you are not going to be doing the same things that you did back home.
Yeah.
You want to come and assimilate.
Yeah.
And I think because you said that, I realized that the importance of assimilation is so real, and the reason that we like you said, we are here for reasons beyond the economic upsides.
Yeah.
So we can't be wasting what this land has to offer
Yeah.
just because
And there's a lot that
there's
there
a
is.
lot. It's just
Yeah.
that we need to see, and we're privileged to
Yeah.
have seen the best of what our land offered,
Yeah.
and we have the wisdom to filter
Yeah.
what's good and bad, and just bring and just take in the best of
Yeah.
both the sides.
Yeah, let's take a short break now. When we come back, we'll talk about how you use that concept for your first entrepreneurial venture in the US. So stay tuned, and we'll be back after these messages. Welcome back to Diasporaa on KKNW, where we share interesting stories of first generation immigrants from South Asia. We're talking to Prachi Mehta, lifelong professional and now entrepreneur in the pharma industry, and my best friend. So before we jump back into the conversation, if you like listening to our show, please consider following us on Instagram or leaving us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcasts. So before the break, we were talking about mixing the best of both cultures and assimilating. Let's talk about your first entrepreneurial venture, Early Foods, and how that was maybe something on the same lines.
Yeah. So the birth of Arjun on November 26, 2019 changed a lot for me and for you and us as a couple. So we all know what a child can do
Yeah.
to and change the dynamics. And then you throw in a little bit of a world changing event, which was the pandemic
Yeah.
that was followed right after, 2 months, 3 months after his birth. So while I knew I was going to take a break for a year, nobody had anticipated the pandemic changing so much.
Yeah.
And I remember we were in India. You had come back because you were to get back to your job, and I was supposed to be with Arjun in India for the next few months.
Yeah.
And okay, I'm not going to touch down what happened on your side, but coming back to what happened with me and Arjun. So we were practically stuck in India because of no flights, and that's when Arjun turned 6 months, and that's when his phase of starting solids came into picture, and that was the time when I realized I was kind of there was an itch in my mind to kind of start doing something. I didn't know what I want to do.
Yeah.
I'm somebody who's never sat at home, so I just didn't know what to do, even though I knew motherhood is a full-time job. But there was something within which called me and told me that you need to do something productive.
Yeah.
Okay. That's when I realized I came across this company in India which did healthy traditional baby food, which was started by a mom back then in India because she didn't find good quality healthy food for kids or babies in the market.
Yeah.
That's when I decided to just approach her and I said, "Hey, I think your porridges and your millet powders and cookies all made, from scratch, no preservative, blah, blah, blah. I love these. I think I want to bring them to North America because I would love this. And I'm sure thousands of moms like me would love this product." And she agreed. She said, "Okay, let's give it a shot." That's when that was literally my first experiment in the entrepreneurial world. I didn't know I was entering into it, but I was entering into it. And that's when I decided I'm going to be launching the brand in US or relaunch because she tried it earlier, but it didn't work. So relaunch the brand in the US. And I give it about 8 months. And we were still, not to forget, we were still in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah.
There were travel restrictions. It was a gloomy world. People were dying. It was not business as usual.
Yeah.
That's when I decided to take this just as a challenge for myself.
Yeah.
8 months into it, I think we did pretty well in terms of building the brand, everything through e-commerce, influencer marketing, etc. We built up the brand. We raked in almost, I think, close to $60,000-$70,000 sales just by being at home and doing this on the side.
Yeah.
And that gave me the confidence that my thought process of bringing in the best of both the world for raising my kid does not just end at raising my child, but there are a lot of synergies in terms of even running my business.
Yeah.
And that's when I decided that whatever I do from now, it could be this, it could be something else. I had no clue what I was going to do next, but it had to be bringing in the two worlds together.
Yeah. I think that does impact every aspect of our life. And while you were running this, we moved to Seattle with my job at Amazon.
Yeah.
What was the difference between moving to Vancouver and moving to Seattle?
Honestly, as much as my move to Vancouver felt like a very, very, very big and bold step and very difficult for me, our move to Seattle felt like a cakewalk. It felt like, okay, we're just moving home, so we're just going somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because I think I had seen so much and I had gone through so many emotions of having made the big move that any other move after that felt like nothing.
Yeah.
So I was completely fine. The big difference, though, in my head, or rather the big adjustment, was moving to suburbs from the downtown life. So I was like, oh my God, we're going to move to a quiet life. It's like, okay, since we are on a steep learning curve of doing the first of many firsts, let's do this. Let's go and live the suburb life, which I've never done before.
How have you approached building high quality, lasting friendships in both these places?
It's a very interesting question. Having lived in Bombay for almost 30 plus years, 31 years,
Yeah.
I never had to go, or you never had to go and make friends. We always had friends. We
Yeah.
had cousins. We had everything.
Yeah.
So, again, something which we never really thought about until we had to make friends. And that was kind of scary because it's like, oh my God, how do you even make friends at this age? Because you had
Yeah.
all these preconceived notions of your childhood
Yeah.
friends are your only friends.
Yeah.
Again, having said that, I think we were pretty lucky to have met really good people. And both of us were on the same page that, of course, we're going to meet people who are new, just like us, but we want a sense of belonging to the country, land. So we want to make friends who've lived there enough for a long time so that we feel grounded the way they are grounded. Because as the saying goes, birds of the same feather flock together. So if you're just going to be with friends who have come from a new planet,
Mhm.
just migrated, you and I both kind of shut off after a few meetings, or after a few times having
A
met
few
them.
minutes, I would say.
Yeah, just being polite, because there's not much in common, and it's just about everybody's just
Yeah,
talking
because
about their
our life
problems.
path has been very different
Very
as well.
different. Yeah.
And I mean, there is a certain bias towards talking about problems. Like, I think that's also somewhere an Indian cultural thing
Yeah.
where we tend to focus on the yes, but instead of the yes, and. I think that the fact that we had friends who had been here for a long time created a very different baseline for us.
We went looking for those kind of friends.
I have a small anecdote to share here. We were probably a week in the country in Canada, and we found this Indian meetup. It was happening at a mall. We found it on one of these meetup apps, right? And we were driving to that place, and the admin messaged, "We're meeting in front of the Starbucks, but don't buy coffee at the Starbucks because it's expensive. There's a Tim Hortons next to it. Buy a coffee there, it'll be cheaper. Or because it's a food court, you can also bring it from home." Prachi's like, "Yeah, can we turn around? I I don't like the vibe here." So I said, "Oh, we're almost there. Let's go. Let's check it out." And yeah, we should probably have turned around because we did not relate to that whole mindset of, oh, I'm trying to, you know, like, I understand you don't want to make, like extravagant expenses.
Yeah.
And when we did buy our Starbucks coffee, everyone was like, "Oh, you didn't read the message. You wasted $3." And I'm like, "Yeah, this is a very scarcity mindset
Yeah.
type of group here.
Yeah.
And I don't think we want to associate with that because then that becomes our baseline." Everyone was just complaining about having to do the dishes and this and that. And I'm like, "Yeah, you chose to come here. So you chose all the good and bad that comes with coming here. So what's the point of, doing all of that? Plus, also, what people don't understand is they're comparing their life in India, which was like a top 10 percentile, with their life here as a new immigrant, which is probably top 50 percentile. If you make it to the top 10 percentile in the US, you'll have a help and a chauffeur, and you'll be able to afford all of those things. So it's not a fair comparison that way. But yeah, just going back to that point, our first few friends, and I bring this up on the show a lot, I've interviewed some of those, like Chef Suri and Imroz and Juhi, that it made a big difference to have those types of friends in our early days. So after Early Foods, you've had more entrepreneurial ventures since then. Tell us more about your current business, Sowaka Health, and what is it that you do in that business?
So after Early Foods, I did realize that I did find my lost confidence. It was, for me, setting up
Yeah.
Early Foods was more like regaining some confidence, lost confidence, and just checking whether whether I'm even worthy of doing a business or going down the entrepreneurial path. So 8 months into it, I knew I'm not going to do this forever because pharma is my calling.
Yeah.
So that's when I decided that I'm going to go back into pharma. And I did not immediately jump in the entrepreneurial world because Arjun was still too young.
Yeah.
We were again moving countries. I kind of dabbled into the space of consulting where I purposely chose a BD, business development consulting
Yeah.
role, where I could go out and meet people because that's what I needed. The day when we landed in the US, which was precisely 3.5 years ago, I remember, and I was telling this to a few of my friends, I was like, I don't know what am I going to do. I don't know a single person in the US from the
Yeah.
work perspective.
Yeah.
I have no network in terms of a work, like colleagues or like people who are even into the pharmaceutical space. Yes, we had few friends in Seattle, but that was it. That's not work.
Yeah.
So I don't know how am I going to start. And Arjun was 2.5 years old. That's when my consulting assignment of going out there in conferences, meeting people, helped me big time.
Yeah.
3.5 years from then, I know at least I'd say 100 plus people now
Yeah.
who are like a phone call away from me if I need some work
Yeah.
from them. It was a journey. I had to build that journey very quickly because time was not in
Yeah.
our favor, and that led to the birth or to the launch of my current entrepreneurial venture, Sowaka Health. So I think I would like to talk a little bit more about that,
Yeah.
how that was born. So I met my current co-founder who's from Toronto in one of the conferences I was out. And that time we didn't think much about any of this until earlier this year, where we came together to realize a common passion, a shared passion. And we decided that my whole life story of blending the best of both the worlds was coming together, and
Yeah.
it was time to put that in action. So what Sowaka Health basically does is there are enough patients on the other side of the world, which is my previous land, India, our previous land, India, where these patients are cancer patients or patients who have rare diseases,
Yeah.
and they're looking for medications which have been developed and launched in the Western world, which is America or Europe, but it's still not made its path to the developing countries, emerging markets like India, Middle East, or Asian countries. So, as the world now knows, the world is changing. The world geopolitics are changing.
Yeah.
India is no longer the India it used to be even when we left it, which is 7 years,
Mm.
8 years ago. It's right now like the fourth largest economy. It's with third highest number of billionaires and fourth highest number of millionaires.
Yeah.
There is enough wealth in that country.
Yeah.
It's just that a lot of these markets are still not the focus markets for many of these medicines because they are far too expensive. Like
Yeah.
it could run into like, $3,000 or $10,000 per pack for a month, which is a ridiculously high value for a medicine. But believe it or not, India does have the patient pool who can afford these medicines. So I decided that the need for a company like Sowaka Health is imminent.
Yeah.
And we are 10 years from now, we would be ahead of time, but not today because that country is ready. And a
Yeah.
lot of countries around India are ready. We're still targeting just the top 1% of India, but
Mhm.
with a country which has 1.4 billion people,
It's a lot.
top
Yeah.
1% is a lot, is many a times the potential is more than all the European countries put together.
So, a couple of points to make here. We don't give ourselves enough credit, I feel, for coming this late in life and rebuilding and to where we are. Every time my parents and my in-laws visit, I always ask them, "How does it seem like we're doing?" And parents being parents will always say nice things, but I do feel like we've accomplished a fair bit in the 7 years that we've come in to the point where we have so many close friends, we have a big circle, and we're both entrepreneurs in a country where we have a burn rate. In India, we had no burn rate. We were living with the family. We, for most of our married life, one has been a corporate employee, one has been a business person, and now we're both business person. So, given that with that enhanced risk, we're still able to pull through, keep growing, financially or as individuals, as entrepreneurs. I think that, and a lot of it goes to you as well because I wanted this. I wanted to be in this part of the world. My spouse didn't, quote unquote, drag me all the way here. So, more credit to you for that. Would you move back? And if so, under what circumstances?
Adi, I think you know the answer.
Yeah.
but so yes, for your audience, the answer is yes, I would move back. But
She has a permanently packed bag in her closet.
that's yeah, like one day Adi will just wake up and be like, "Where did she go?" And I'll be like, "Hey,
I
I'm
moved back.
home."
Yeah.
So, but having said that, I was just telling, we were just talking, I think a couple of months ago, where I was just telling him that I do feel a lot more settled now than what I felt over
Yeah.
the last few years because honestly, there was a lot, at least in my mind, had to go through in terms of moving to a new country, leaving parents, leaving career, having a child, a
Mhm.
pandemic, figuring out my work, my identity. It was a lot. And I do think today we are in a space where I feel a lot more confident. I feel a lot more grounded. And I think the way the world is moving, I would say we are more, I would love to call ourselves more of a global citizen
Mhm.
and just a resident of
Yeah.
this country.
Yeah.
Because, and hence my career choice, where, like you always say, you have chosen a career or your business which could let you be anywhere
Yeah.
and still run the show.
Yeah.
And practically, the decision was made. I mean, we all know I could have chosen to go into corporate America. Like I know
Mhm.
I would have started from some point, made it up, etc. And the security is of having a monthly paycheck was far alluring. Like it was very attractive. But saying no to that was a big choice because in my head, I was like, if tomorrow we move to some other place, or if we decide to move to some
Yeah.
different country or even city, I don't want to reset my life once again.
Yeah.
And that's why, even though it takes a little bit more time, I'm going to invest in the time. But, whatever we do is going to be it's going to be ours. And no matter wherever we go, it's going to come with us.
Yeah. And that was deliberate on our part to an extent.
Yeah.
Let's move into our weekly segments because I'm sure we can talk for a few more hours. Let's spin the wheel and see what we land on. So this one is called Commercial Break. Indian TV ads are an institution, and a lot of us have our favorite TV ads or radio ads or print ads. What is your favorite ad from India or ad campaign from India?
Actually, there are so many of them, but this one particular ad, it's kind of it's resurfaced in my heart and made a comeback in my life after Arjun, let's say after Arjun turned like around 2.5, 3, because the boy in the ad reminds me of Arjun. And this ad is the commercial of, I think it was an oil or a
Zara
ghee.
oil?
Yes, ghee brand. And the boy, and the highlight of that ad is when the boy leaves home and is lured to come back home by the thought of the yummy jalebis,
Yeah.
which his mom makes.
That was also the favorite ad of our guest Juhi, who was
Yeah.
in our first episode.
Yeah.
And the kid goes, and we'll put a link in the show notes, but the kid goes jalebi,
Yeah.
and then he goes back home. Yeah, that's a great one to share. So thank you for sharing that. I think I'm feeling like we have so much more to cover, and I think maybe we'll have you back on another time and then continue these stories, especially of building our life here. Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode, and thank you for listening to Diaspora. We hope you enjoyed hearing Prachi's inspiring story. Remember to check out our show notes for links and more information about the topics we talked about today. Diaspora is part of the Speaking Current network of shows and podcasts, all of which are dedicated to inspiring listeners to build lives of meaning, connection, and value. You can find the Speaking Current network of shows, including Diaspora, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube. And lastly, if you know someone who has a story that can be shared on our show, please feel free to reach out to us on any of our social media handles. We'll be back next week with another interesting story from the South Asian diaspora. Until then, take care and stay curious. And Prachi, thank you for being on my show.
Thank you, Adi, and thank you for bringing us here.